Alrighty, boys and girls. So for the final time this season, we are going to do a preview in the regular season. And whenever we do a preview for the final time in the regular season, it's a preview of Decision Day 2024 in terms of the MLS regular season. And as always, we obviously will have the early game that are all Eastern Conference matchup before the later games are all of the Western Conference matchup. And likewise, this year in Decision Day 2024, all the Eastern Conference game is going to start at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Thus, that's why I didn't put the time on this because, there's no need for me to keep repeating putting 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific when I already mentioned it in this preview. And then, of course, the Western Conference game will be happening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And I specifically put this board as the Eastern Conference game on Decision Day and the other board as the Western Conference game, and I'll probably do the same thing when it comes to the review as well. When I do the review of these Decision Day game, I'll be reviewing the Eastern Conference first, and then we'll do the Western Conference after that as well. And in terms of watching these Decision Day games, it's going to be tough. I will only be able to watch a maximum of 4 games at a time, but I'll definitely have my phone on and tune in the MLS 360 show because, yeah, there's definitely going to be some games that I'll be keeping an eye on, and then there's some games that I know there's 2 games where I'll probably won't really keep too much attention to it because they pretty much have no playoff implication, and both of these teams have already eliminated from the playoffs. And likewise, that is the first game we're going to talk about, which is Chicago versus Nashville SC, and I'll basically said the same thing in the other when I switched the board of how I'm sorry, Chicago and Nashville fans, but most likely I'm not going to be paying too much attention into this game, and most likely when I do the review, this is probably the first game I'll talk about because again, there's really nothing to play for both of these teams. Chicago 7-9-17 and will miss out on the playoff for the 7th consecutive season and continue the longest playoff drought out of any team, the longest active playoff drought out of any team in MLS. Nashville, of course, eliminated from the playoffs for the first time in club history. I already made a moving forward series episode about Nashville just yesterday's, and certainly would love you to tune in to that moving forward series, especially if you're Nashville fans of how it's been just kind of a year that we saw the writing on the wall last season, and this season it kind of continue to a point where they got some rebuilding or retooling to do heading into the upcoming season as well. Now, moving on, we got DC versus Charlotte, and also one more note in terms of this game. I don't think Greg Berhalter is going to make his debut in this game against Chicago. Obviously, Greg Berhalter was hired as the head coach and sporting director. I mean, he could make his debut in this game, but it's kind of weird the fact that you make your debut on the final game of the season when there's really nothing to play for. There's no doubt that I think Frank Kopos will be coaching this game for the very last time before eventually we will hear that they of course will whether what they decide to fire him outright or maybe move him to the assistant head coach role that we've seen before when we saw the previous head coach of the Chicago Fire being fired. Now, moving on, we got DC versus Charlotte FC. So now we get to the part where, these games definitely had some decision day implication. And I'll say that, this season, it feels like the East, there are definitely more big scenario on decision day compared to the Western Conference. And a big part of that is because, I already mentioned there is that playoff race in the Eastern Conference. 4 teams are fighting for those 2 spots. DC is one of those team playing against Charlotte FC. DC have a 10-10-13 record, whereas Charlotte 13-9-11. For DC, it's pretty simple. They can clinch the playoffs with a win or a draw. Or in case if they do lose this game against Charlotte, they just need the Union to lose or draw and Atlanta to lose or draw. Basically, they need both of those teams to draw points in those games, and they'll make it to the playoff no matter what. Now, for Charlotte FC, they could finish as high as 5th place in the standing and as low as 7th place. I think they're currently 6th right now in the standings, and there's no doubt that Charlotte would want to continue to finish strong. I mean, this is a team that started to look like the team we saw back in July, which it's a team that can sneakily be very good heading into the playoffs, and especially as a team that if they are going to be one of the lower seed, I'm pretty sure some of those teams near the top I would not want to face Charlotte. They're gonna give Charlotte's gonna give a hard time to some of those top team in the top three, because this team has been very good defensively, and it started to show once again. But now it seems like the attack has started to break through, and especially Shradetzky has started to figure things out as well. So it should be a very interesting game in this one. But yeah, DC would definitely want to win, because they also sit in that that driver's seats in terms of not only make it to the playoffs, but if they do play in that playing round against Montreal, it would be the one that would be hosting Montreal in that playing round. Now, moving on, we got Miami versus the New England Revolution. Now, on paper, it doesn't seem like there's not a lot to play for both of these teams. One team have already clinched Supporters Shield. One team is pretty much eliminated from the playoffs. But obviously, as I mentioned in my video, talk about the five big storyline heading into Decision Day. The one big storyline coming into this game, and really the big storyline coming into this game, is will Miami break the MLS points record? They can do so if they can get a win against New England. Obviously, the Revs are eliminated from the playoffs, but there's no doubt that Caleb Porter would not want to see this New England team lose this game and hand Miami points record. I mean, you always hate to see a points record being broken, but if imagine if you see the points record being broken to the team that you're basically facing on the final day of the season. I mean, that would be an absolute gut punch if you're a New England Revolution player, fans, or as a team in general. So they're definitely going to give it their all in this game. And again, for Miami, this is the big debate. You know, yes, you want to go for the points record, but then the debate is, do you do that and risk the fact that there could be some potential injury that could happen to best of your player? And that will be very interesting to see heading into the final day, whether or not if Tata Martino feel comfortable of risking it and saying that, hell, we're gonna go for the points record, even if we're going to be risking injury that could happen, or the fact that we just say, you know what, it's not worth it. They already clinched the Porter Shield. They want the squad to be very fresh. And keep in mind, they're a team that is going to be the first team that play in the first round of the playoffs, so they get a shorter rest compared to other teams in MLS when it comes to the first round of the playoffs. So that's good. That could be a key factor as well. But you know, I think maybe to make that decision a little easier is the fact that, you know, Miami, like many of these teams, have not played in over 2 weeks because of the international break, and maybe just to keep the squad fresh, we might see him decide to start the team, and then, you know, maybe in the middle of the way he'll pretty much bring in his reserve, or the other way around, like what we saw in that game against Toronto, where Tata Martino decided to rest some of his starters, but then eventually bring in the big names at halftime or around the 60th minute mark. Now, moving on, we got Montreal versus NYCFC. So Montreal, they're pretty much in the same situation as DC United, and I even wrote on Decision Day, to clinch the playoffs, it's the same scenario as DC. All they need is to not lose this game against NYCFC, or the fact that if they do lose this game, they hope the Union and Atlanta does not both win those games to move into the playoffs. Otherwise, they of course will be they will be eliminated in the playoffs. And obviously, one of the things that I think Montreal fans are very nervous coming into this game is not just because they're facing against NYCFC. That seems like they found their mojo in the last couple of weeks, and seems like they're heading into the playoffs with relatively good form, and they technically still have something to play for too. They want to get home field advantage at least in the first round. They can finish as high as 4 plays and as low as 6 plays. But the fact that Montreal, this has been a problem for them in the past couple of years, where it feels like every time when they head into decision day, where they need to get a scenario, follow the scenario to get themselves into the playoffs, and they don't do that, and they end up missing out on the playoff in heartbreaking fashion. So yeah, that's the narrative that Montreal were trying to fight off. And again, you know, it is simple for them. All they need to do is just not lose this game against NYCFC. But it's easier said to be done when considering NYCFC has been pretty good lately. I mean, if there's only one saving grace, at least NYCFC this season, as much as they have been very good recently, the road form hasn't really been that good this season. But again, you know, for Montreal, let's just hope that if you're a Montreal fan, those ugly narrative doesn't reel, or those narrative doesn't reel its ugly head again, where they've seen it so many times, where they're in a good situation to make it to the playoffs, and they don't do that, and they end up missing out in the playoffs on the final day of the season. Now, moving on, we got the New York Red Bulls versus Columbus. So this is also kind of a game that is a little bit meaningless as well. I mean, the Red Bulls, they can finish as high as sixth position with a 11-14-8 record. Columbus, they pretty much have nothing to play for. They're going to be finished second no matter what. So pretty much they may be just gonna rest most of their player heading into the first round playoffs, and not to mention they are one of those teams that did play in the international break, though some of their star players didn't play in that game because they were playing during international duty. So again, yeah, I think that they'll probably rest some of their guys, knowing that they just came back from international duty and against a Red Bull side that again. They need to generate any momentum they can do heading into the playoffs. This team has one and done written all over it. That so Metro moment seems like it's inevitable, but if they can get a win against Columbus, maybe just maybe they can get at least a little momentum heading into the playoffs as well. Now we got Orlando versus Atlanta United. So this is one of the couple of big rivalry games that we're gonna see on Decision Day, and I already mentioned in my big storyline heading into Decision Day. You can debate among yourself whether it's a good idea to have big rivalry game happening on Decision Day, depending on certain circumstances that needs to live up. And in some way, it does with the way that Atlanta is one of those teams that are fighting for their playoff life. Though they really need a lot to go their way in order to make it to the playoffs. Though for Orlando, they're technically still have something to play for. I mean, they can get a first round home field advantage with a win or a draw in this game, or if NYCFC lose or draw in their game against Montreal, they of course will clinch that fourth spot. For Atlanta, again, they absolutely need a win in this game and hope that DC or Montreal lost. But the other scenario is that they need a win in this game or DC lose and Philly lose or draw in the game. And then there's even a third scenario where they can sneak in where Montreal lose and Philly lose or draw in order to make it to the playoffs. So as much as there are a lot that has to go right for them, at least they have a couple of different scenario where they can actually get into the playoffs. But the bottom line is they need to win in this game, and Orlando is not going to just hand them the win. Orlando is probably not going to rest their players, especially with the way that again they still have something to play for. They want home field advantage in the first round of playoffs, and not to mention this is Atlanta United and Orlando City we're talking about. Orlando never you usually would just give a win to their hated rival up north for all these years. So this should be a very interesting kind of game, and there's no doubt that Orlando they would love nothing to knock Atlanta out of the playoffs in this game with a win or even a draw in this one. Now, moving on, we got Philly versus FC Cincinnati. So for Philly, they also need some help, but not as much help as what Atlanta needed. They also have a 9-10-14 record, and Cincinnati has a 17-5-11 record. Again, this is kind of a rivalry game as well because for the last couple of years, we know a Philly and Cincinnati game always live up to expectation. But for Philly, obviously they need to win in this game just like Atlanta, but they need a win, and all they need is either DC or Montreal losing. If either one of those teams loses and Philly was able to get a win, then they of course move on into the playoffs. Now there are other factors that Philly can get in, but I won't of course mention it too much because again, it's kind of crazy. I already mentioned all the scenario for Atlanta. It gets a little bit too complicated. But the easiest way for Philly to make it is that they need to win this game against Cincinnati, and they hope that DC or Montreal would lose. Now for Cincinnati, they're gonna finish third no matter what in this game. And again, just like Columbus, maybe resting their guys coming into this game. I know Cincinnati has not had a good run of form heading into the playoffs, and last thing they want is to lose another game and go on a losing run heading into the playoffs. And there's going to be some teams that is near the bottom or in the lower seed is going to licking their chop when they face against Cincinnati in the first round, especially with the way Cincinnati hasn't been playing very very well lately. But still, I do think that in a game where they haven't really nothing to play for, maybe Pat Nolan will rest some of the guys. This team has been riddled with injuries throughout the season. Last thing you want is to start play your starter and risk even more injury potentially could happen. And for Philly again, they have played Cincinnati really strong this season, and there's no doubt they're going to do it again, and they're gonna have to win in this game in order to make it to the playoffs and need some help from both DC or Montreal. Now, that being said, I am now going to switch board and now look at the Western Conference matchup and preview those games heading into Decision Day 2024 in the MLS regular season. So now looking at some of these Western Conference game, and as I mentioned, it feels like the Western Conference when it comes to Decision Day scenario, it's not as dramatic as we see in the Eastern Conference, mainly because the playoff race is pretty much all but done. I already mentioned in the penultimate match week that pretty much all the teams that are going to be in the playoff position have clinched, and all the teams that are below the red line are already eliminated. But that being said, we move on into the first of 7 game, and all of these games kick off at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and that of course is Austin versus the Colorado Rapids. So this game again, like some of these games, doesn't really have a lot of playoff implication. Austin is already eliminated from playoffs. Colorado, the only thing they play for is seeding. They can finish as high as 5th position, but they can go as low as 7th position as well. And judging by the fact that Chris Armour's team have not played very well lately, and it feels like maybe that magic is started to run out, and that great resilience that they've shown throughout the season is started to go the wrong way. Yeah, there's no doubt that they want to win this game to get some of that back heading into the playoffs, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so. And then the next one, we got Dallas versus Sporting KC, and this is the other game where really, I'm sorry, Dallas and Sporting KC fan, but I'm pretty much not going to really tune into to this one at all, because there's really nothing to play for both of these teams. Both of them are already eliminated from playoff implication. They're just trying to finish with a win and try to finish with some pride to end the season. Obviously, I'll be doing the FC Dallas moving forward series episode pretty soon. I think I just got 2 more teams left in terms of moving forward. I haven't done. I think I haven't done Toronto, and I haven't done FC Dallas as well. In terms of currently, obviously, I'll do the other team that is going to be eventually eliminated in the East heading into the decision day game, but there's no doubt those are 2 that is going to be next on my list in terms of the moving forward series episode. And yeah, again, it's a game that's kind of meaningless, and that it's a game that just like the game that I talked about between Chicago and Nashville. This might be the first one I'll be reviewing when I do the review of the Western Conference MLS Decision day review. Now, moving on, we got Houston versus the LA Galaxy. So for the Galaxy, it's hard to believe, but they actually still have something to play for in terms of clinching the top spot in the West. I thought they actually clinched the top spot in their last game, but no, technically they're mathematically not clinched the top spot, but it doesn't take much. All they need to do is get a win or a draw. If they don't lose this game, they should be able to clinch. I mean, if they do lose this game, they do have to kind of rely on LAFC to not win their game against the Quakes to be able to clinch top spot. But knowing, as I'll mention in a bit, that LAFC is facing against the worst team in the league, yeah, good luck in terms of trying to do that, especially when the Quakes are playing on the road against LAFC. For Houston, they finish as high as 5th place and low as 7th position, and there's no doubt that, I don't need to remind Galaxy fans in terms of all the heartbreak that they suffer on decision day, especially, I'm pretty sure in the beginning of the season, Galaxy fans must be absolutely livid the fact that the schedule maker are playing them against the Dynamo on decision day. It feels like this is a matchup we always seen on decision day, and again, the Dynamo has caused a lot of pain to the Galaxy throughout the decision day as well. So there's no doubt the Galaxy would definitely don't want to let that top spot in the West slip away. And especially it's kind of important too, because if LAFC does finish top and the Galaxy finish second, in case if we are going to get another El Tráfico in the Western Conference final this time, LAFC would be hosting that game. And as we already know, in terms of the 2 El Tráfico playoff matchup, LAFC have won both of them, and both of them are at BMO Stadium. So yeah, the Galaxy would definitely not want to that, especially with them working so hard to get that top spot away. Yeah, they definitely do not want to slip on the final day of the season. And likewise for LAFC, again, they still have chance to clinch the top spot. All they need to do is get a win in this one and hope that the Galaxy of course, lose their game. Now, obviously, that seems like a lot to ask, but again, as I mentioned, the Galaxy has had their problem against the Dynamo on decision day. It's always been almost an Achilles heel for the Galaxy, where they always let things slip against the Houston Dynamo. And again, for LAFC, playing against a Quakes team that pretty much is in Cancun mode ever since August, this should be an easy win. I don't want to say it's a guaranteed 3 points, because again, I never want to say it's a guaranteed 3 points no matter what opponent it is. But it should be an easy win. It would be one of the biggest surprises if the LAFC does not get an easy 3 points against the Quakes, who pretty much already checked out down the stretch. Now, moving on, we got Minnesota versus St. Louis City, and now we get to some of these matchups that actually do still have some implication in terms of the play-in round. I think the play-in round is something that is kind of almost like the playoffs right now, where some of these teams, they definitely don't want to be playing in the play-in round. Not only have to play in that wild card game in the middle of the week, but play an extra game and put more taxes in terms of the legs than they necessarily do, and that's what Minnesota is trying to avoid. They have a 14-7-12 record. They face against St. Louis, who has an 8-3-12 record. For Minnesota, it's actually pretty easy for them to avoid the play-in round. They just need to win this game against St. Louis. Although again, that's easier said to be done, considering St. Louis has looked really good down the stretch, and that Minnesota has had their struggle at home this season. One thing I will say that will at least give Minnesota maybe some chance is the fact that they actually have not conceded a goal in the last 4 games. It's been actually 405 minutes exactly that Minnesota has last conceded a goal. That I think is probably the longest streak in terms of club history of them not conceding a goal. I mean, they've got 4 straight clean sheet. Who would have thought that the back line, which was very wobbly throughout the middle of the season, has kind of got their acts together and really has turned it on late into the season to really give them some momentum heading into the playoffs. And again, if they win this one, they will avoid in the play-in round, and there could be a chance where they can climb as high as 5th position as well. Now, in case if they don't win this game and they get a draw or a loss in this game in the worst case scenario, they can still avoid the play-in round. All they have to hope is Vancouver don't lose or draw or hope that Vancouver don't win their game. Then of course we'll make it get or they'll avoid the play-in round. And then, of course, if they get a draw and Vancouver, in case does win their game, if only Vancouver win by 1 goal and they get a draw, they would also avoid that play-in round. But one other thing is that Vancouver can't drop as low as 9th position. So if they absolutely need to play in that play-in round, at least the game is going to be at Allianz Field. Now, for St. Louis, obviously they were eliminated from playoff vacation, but again, this is a team that played very well. They arguably played their best game in the last game against the Houston Dynamo, which I was there in person to witness as well. And they're not going to give Minnesota's an easy time to get the victory in this game. Now, moving on, we got RSL versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So for RSL, they really just only had seeding left to play. They can finish as high as 3rd place and finish as low as 4th place. For Vancouver, obviously the only way they can avoid the play-in round is that they need to win this game and hope that Minnesota lose it as well. They can technically also avoid with Minnesota drawing if they can win by more than 3 goals, but that's a lot to ask for Vancouver, especially when they're playing on the road. And even though I know they're playing against an RSL team that haven't really looked that good lately and has kind of looked a little fraudulent lately, and I mentioned before, this team seem more like a pretender rather than a contender heading into the playoffs. It's still not going to be an easy game, and not to mention Vancouver has just completely fall apart. I think this is kind of between 2 teams that really kind of fall apart late in the season and become very fraudulent, and they just hope that they can get a win in this one to make sure they get some momentum into the playoffs. So we'll see who, of course, will do so in this game. And then lastly, we got the Cascadia Derby between Seattle and the Portland Timbers. I think this is the first time ever that we see the Cascadia Derby in the final game of the season. And, this game definitely has a lot to play for in terms of the Cascadia Cup as well. The winner of this Cascadia Cup or winner of this game will win Cascadia Cup. Now, there's a draw in this game. Portland, of course, will win the Cascadia Cup. So for the Timbers, technically, they don't need to win in this game to win the Cascadia Cup, though. I mean, if you ask any Timbers fan, they're not going to just play for a draw in this one. And not to mention, they still have something to play for where, yes, they can't avoid the playing round, but in case if Vancouver slips up, if they can get a win in this game against the Sounders and Vancouver lose or draw in their game, then the playing round is going to be at Providence Park. And knowing how good this season they have been at Providence Park, yeah, there's no doubt that they want to have that playing game at Providence Park. And by the way, if in case it is Portland versus Vancouver in the playing round, I mean, I know I will fill out the bracket later on once all these games are over and the bracket is set. But I'm sorry, Vancouver fans, but I'm definitely picking Portland to move on because I really want to see the Portland versus LA Galaxy game. I mean, I've said it before many times. I really want to see a Portland versus Galaxy game because those two meeting has just been absolutely insane. And that if you thought that last year when we had a first round playoff match between Atlanta and Columbus, that seems pretty crazy and seemed pretty high octane. Just wait when you see a Portland versus Galaxy game. That game, I would not be surprised that every single game will have at least 5 or 6 goals in it because of how crazy that matchup might be, and that might be the best of three series out of all of them in terms of an entertainment standpoint. So yeah, again, we'll see. Obviously, it still takes a lot to get to that point. Portland will need to win that play-in round in order to have that happen, and that again, they have a lot to play for. More, I think, more than what Seattle has. The Seattle, they can of course they obviously need to win in this game to win the Cascadia Cup. But in terms of just the seeding wise, they can finish as high as third place, but they can finish only as low as fourth place. So they automatically have already clinched home field advantage. But again, the Cascadia Cup is up for grabs, and if you know anything about the Cascadia Cup, it is a cup that these two fan base and along with Vancouver would really want to win. It means a lot to these free Cascadia team, and there's no going to be backing down in this game. Both of these teams are going to start put on most of their starters, and let's just also hope that it's going to be a good game as well. Because one of the things that I will say that has been a criticism in terms of the Cascadia Derby the last couple of games between Seattle and Portland, at times it's been kind of a drag. It's not as entertaining as what we see with the Hell is Real Derby, and pretty much almost the opposite of what we see out Trafco, where that game, there's a reason why many people are saying that is right now the best rivalry in MLS, because not only it's between two hated team in the same city, but it's probably the most entertaining rivalry, and it's not even close whatsoever. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at all these games in terms of Decision Day. Again, like I said, after Decision Day is over, I'll do the review of the Eastern Conference game. If I have time, I'll do the review of the Western Conference game on the same day. If not, I'll just do it on Sunday as well. And then I'm also planning to fill out the bracket and also react to my prediction that I made in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference standings, and also do a video looking at tiers of where each team is in terms of competing in the playoffs out of all these playoff teams. So there's a lot of schedule, a lot of video I'm gonna have to make in a short time, especially with the way that Tuesday is the beginning of the playoffs game. Yeah, there's not really a lot of time for me to make these videos, so don't be surprised. There's gonna be a big jumble of video that I'm gonna do in a short amount of period. And then of course for those wildcard game I'll be definitely keep an eye on it and definitely do an individual review as well for those games. But there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button, and as always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of all of these games heading into Decision Day and your prediction for all these games heading into Decision Day. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.